Howdy, howdy, howdy. All right, if you are joining us online, thanks for being here. If you are in the building and you can hear my big old booming voice, that trumpet voice, come on this direction. We're going to get started in about 1 minute. I know that some folks may be kind of coming in on the heels of everything. A little bit of orientation, if you will. There's going to be a number on the screen, and that screen will be available for folks to send in questions. However, if you are in the building, there will be a couple of microphones here. So if you want to come front and center and ask a question, then you can do that. But if you're in the room and you'd rather not come forward, talk on the microphone or whatever, you can text as well, okay? So those online definitely need to text if they have a question. Those in the building may choose to ask it on the microphone or via text. Oh, there goes my wife texting me right now. All right. They are. Okay. So we are not starting yet in the room here because Ashley just texted me and said, you probably already know this, but it's saying invalid number for the Zoom. But it's not a Zoom. She said Zoom. She's not on Zoom. Tell everybody, hang on, refresh the screen. I have to change something. I can't tell them that, though. Oh, I am on? Okay, I guess I don't know if I'm on or not. If you're hearing my voice and you're out there on the internets, they're refreshing here. I don't know what's going on. Really good joke right now. You got a good one? Anybody? What did you say? Joy said Cowboys. That's all I heard. That's not funny. That is not funny. Oh, I know of one. Guys. Hey, I don't know if you saw this or not. Don may be aware of this. So SEC is, or maybe it's A&M, is saying no more than 25% capacity at the ball game. So for real, I saw on internet this week, it's got to be true because it was there, I saw on the internet that they are consulting with University of Texas because they figured that UT knew how to only have 25 occupancy at their games. Kelly does not find that funny at all. Kelly's like, Don, we're out of here. That is unacceptable. He just blasphemed. No, I'm teasing. So this morning, did y'all hear me catch myself? Like, when I think of a wizard, I think of somebody that's brilliant and not like a wizard, like Dungeons and Dragons kind of thing. It's like, yeah, oh, am I on? I'm on. Hey, all right. Welcome. All right, so we are good? All right, there are 2 people watching currently. And here is the good news. If anyone in your life says, hey, I tried to watch online tonight and it didn't work, they are recording. And whether they watch it live or not, the email will go out this week for you and for anybody else for the live stream. So let me lead us in prayer, and then we will get started, all right? God, thank you so much for a chance to gather as a church family. God, I thank you for friends and family that have gathered in this room as well as online, even if there's any kind of technical thing going on right now, that God, you have brought us together, that we don't want to miss the moment that is now. Like, we don't ever want to miss the moment that is now. But all the more so, I believe, in the middle of all this COVID start and stop kind of thing. Because as you all know, we are, I don't know, it feels like 5.5 years, but I think it's 5.5 months that we've been going through this COVID thing, right? And so we know that things in life, and not so much at church, we haven't stuttered and stopped and started, but there's been some of that kind of sputtering back and forth in life as we make decisions as families, as we go back to school, as we get involved with our extracurricular activities, as we get involved with our church activities and things like that. And here is the deal. If there was ever a moment in time that a church, a family, an individual should have clarity from God where He is leading us, now is an opportune time. Because all too often, organizations and churches, we can get busy with all the things that we're doing, and they're good things, that we never really have the time to slow down and think about, are these the best things? And so I don't know whether you and your family have had an opportunity to kind of process those things or not. And I'm going to kind of experiment with something in just a second, so be preparing. I would love to hear, either in text or in microphones, what maybe, don't come yet, but I'll tell you in a minute, what God has been doing in your life in this season. So I'll share what I mean by that. And that is, we have 4 kids, and having 4 kids and being involved in lots of things, we are coming and going a lot until the 1st of March. And then we did a lot of staying at the house and all together. And so the 6 of us have had way more time together than we have had ever, really. Because when the younger boys came along, the girls were already up and kind of doing their activities and stuff like that. And we have enjoyed family time that we realized that we were missing out on. But in this moment, it has forced us in a good way to enjoy family time together. So here's what it looks like. When dance started back up, the girls didn't take as many nights of dance as they did before all this started. Does that make sense? Then also, we've had the blessing that we already had 3 homeschooled, and the one that was public schooled asked his mama if he could do homeschool. And so we fully support public school, we fully support homeschool, but for our family, now we can get all of our family on the same calendar, which allows us more family time and flexibility. So the thing that I'm seeing, while this time period has been frustrating and not being together as a church family as much as I would like and things like that, my hope group not being able to meet in person, we've been blessed to reevaluate some things. We weren't like going off the rails in the wrong direction, but we've been able to really clarify the things that really matter most, if that makes sense. So those are some things that God's been doing in our life as we have experienced this COVID period. So be thinking about maybe some ways. We don't have 30 minutes per testimony, but if you have a thought to share, that would be great. As a church, and as ministries, and as staff, and as leadership of the church, we have an amazing time to step back and say, all right, this idea, this vision of be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church, are we serious about that, or is that just kind of a neat slogan to throw on the screen? The reality is it's not something that we just want to say that we believe. It's not just a slogan. It's something we really want to live out in a very real way. And so as you think about the ways that you're involved in the life of this church, as you're involved in discipleship, as you're involved in Bible study, as you're involved in ministry, or as you're waiting for some aspect of that to kind of re-engage, let's really evaluate every single thing we do and figure out, does it line up with be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church? As a staff, we've acknowledged there are 3 broad categories of our events, activities, and programs that as we evaluate some of the things, many of the things, we'll say, yep, it definitely fits that purpose. So when we can, we're going to kick that thing back off, and we're going to do it basically like we've done it in the past. And then there's other things that we go, you know what, that's a good program, and that has an aspect of living out that idea of being a disciple, making disciples, and being the church, but we need to fine-tune it so we can make it more specific to that purpose and more meaningful. And so there are some of the things that we do that will probably be tweaked along the way so that maybe we do it not quite the same way, but a little bit different, all not just because we wanted to do something different, but because this is the perfect time to evaluate things when everything is on pause outside of our Sunday morning worship service time. I know our Hope groups have been meeting. I know there's some things that are going. We're not pausing ministry, but I hope you know what I mean when I say this is an awesome time to do that. And then there's a third category. And before you kind of worry about it, this is the least populated of the 3 categories. But a third category could be, you know what? That was a good, fun program. There's nothing wrong with it, but we just don't see how that would help us be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church. In case you're wondering, no, I don't have a particular event or program in mind when I say that. I am just saying that we need to evaluate that. So be praying for us as a staff. Be praying for leaders that are a part of our congregation, whether that be at CAT level or our deacons or our Hope Group leaders or any kind of ministry leaders, all of those things, so that we can genuinely, honestly evaluate where we are so that as we kick things back off, it'll make the most sense. So let me share with you some things that are about to kick back off, okay? So here are some activities, some programs, events that we're about to start, some of which will be almost like they've been done before, except for physical distancing, which we don't normally focus a whole lot on that before March. And then some that will be almost entirely different. So let me throw these things out. Most of these things are going to be starting again unless something changes, which we anticipate it won't, but you know we're in a fluid time period, so just accept that that could happen. And that is, most of these things are going to be starting back mid to late September, okay? So just newsflash, it's almost September, so mid-September is not that far away. Today is the 23rd of August, so mid-September we're talking about 3 weeks away or so, okay? So here are the things that are going to kick back off, and so here they are. Children's worship. Children's worship for kindergarten, first, and second grade only at this point. It's not that we're quitting the other stuff, it's that we're starting things back off a little bit more slowly. We want to protect our preschoolers right now still, and the many people that it takes to staff preschool, so that's why we're starting at K1 too. We feel like our 3, 4, and 5, 3rd, 4th, 5th graders are a little more mature to be able to stay in here, and so K, first, and second are going to be starting. We are planning on starting that September the 13th. So Howard and his staff are busy planning that. They're going to be able to maintain physical distancing as much as possible to keep folks safe. We know that some of our families will begin to send their kids right away. We know other families will say, nope, we appreciate it, but we're going to keep our kids either at home with us as we worship at home or in the room. And here's the deal. If you've got a child that's kindergarten, first, or second grade starting September 13th, they are free and welcome to still be in this service the whole time, okay? So the way we plan on that operating right now is that they will still be in here for the singing portion of our worship service. I don't really know how we're going to do. You know how it's been in the past, right? Like they all crowd in down here, which we're not going to do, and then they all run out there like a herd of elephants with 400 kids that are going that way for children's worship. We know that it can't quite go down like that. So I don't know whether it's like, I don't know how they're going to manage that heading back, but they'll go back to children's worship during the sermon portion, basically, and then they'll be in there until we dismiss. So here's what's going on. We have some leaders that are going to help with that, and we might need some more leaders to help with that so that they can serve on a monthly rotation basis. So children's worship for kindergarten, first, and second. The other thing that's going to start is youth. We're going to have 605, which is our Sunday night gathering for our youth that will start on also September the 13th. And they will meet at 605 in their normal place, which is upstairs in room 200. So Howard is working through that process as well. So that is starting on September the 13th as well. Another thing that is about to start, and ladies, I know some of you are already well aware of this, we have our women's Bible studies that are starting. And I'm going to talk about them in just a moment in a little more details, but they're starting the week of September the 13th also. We are starting a new discipleship training effort that David is leading in. I'll talk more about it in a moment. It's going to be called 4 Fields, the number 4, 4 Fields Discipleship Training, and that is also going to start the week of September 13th. You hear a recurring theme here. September 13th is kind of the week that things are going to start back. And then our hope groups, I mentioned this morning, they're going to start, and I realize some of our hope groups are continuing to meet right now, but we're going to really do a big push-off or kickoff for them again so that folks can either get into one that fits their schedule a little bit better or folks that are not already in a hope group. And those are going to start towards the end of September or the beginning of October. We're still working through some details there. So hope groups and these other items are starting about mid to late September, most of those happening the week of September 13th. Now, that's what's going on. That's what's going to be kicking off in the real near future. I intentionally gave you some time to think. I don't know whether anybody has anything they'd like to share. I would love to hear either via text, so Howard, be ready. The phone number should be on the screen. Text how God has used this time period to be a blessing for you and your family. We're not done yet. Like, we have other things we're covering, but I wanted to kind of give you a chance. Yeah. Yeah, I got that on my list. I didn't have it right there, yes. College and young adults starting the week of the 13th as well, but I do have it in another place in my list. Thank you. All right, so if anybody has a brief testimony or a word they want to share, I would love for you to either stand up and share it and I'll repeat it out loud, or you can come to a microphone, or you can text it. Anybody at all. Don't be shy. How has God used this time to be a blessing in your life or your family's life? I'm not going anywhere until at least one person shares. No, I'm teasing.
Alan, I've got a couple.
Hey, all right. Did they text it?
They did text me.
Oh, yeah. For those of you playing at home, y'all are doing a great job.
Yeah.
These guys here, they're chicken to talk on the microphone. That's why you can text. Maybe they texted you. Maybe it is somebody here. All right, go ahead, bro.
One of the things that Randy Bowder texted, and he said God's really brought a series of changes for us. He's been using this time to revamp parenting for our children. It's also been a really sweet, he did say 2 sweet times for his marriage. So they've been able to spend a little more time and focus on some things that way. Weston sent me something talking about how he'd been unemployed for quite a while before COVID started. He got a job right before it happened, and they said, okay, now go home. Right away. And so that was kind of a weird thing that went through with his job. But here's the thing I wanted to share with you that he said. He said, Kelly and I have been trying to have kids since February 2017. In 3.5 years of patience, we've entered foster training and are busy getting our house ready for that. God has used this time, mentors in my life, friendships, the politics at my job, and even state-sponsored trauma training to teach me how to retrain my thoughts and to finally accept humility in how I speak. We're so excited, stressed, hopeful, and scared to be parents, even in the midst of the craziness of this world.
Cool. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? So they were at home. Anybody else here in the room have anything you'd like to share real quick? I see some people smiling because they either have something in mind or they're hoping somebody else does, whichever the case may be. All right. All right. We're going to keep moving then. Thanks for sharing those couple of examples. All right. So, I wanted to kind of walk through, for those of you, because I know we have some that are fairly new to our congregation, and so I wanted to walk through basically the 4 ways that we anticipate people to be able to be plugged into the life and ministry of our congregation. So here they are. Number 1, we believe involvement in worship services is critical. I'm going to talk about some of these individually in a moment. Number 2, we believe that involvement in a small group, which we call hope groups, is vital and important. Number 3, we believe that being involved in discipleship, and remember we talked about what discipleship was this morning, we believe that being involved in discipleship is critical. And then number 4, we believe that serving both in the congregation as well as out in the world is vital. So those 4 areas are the primary ways that you can get plugged into the life of our congregation. So I want to kind of hit each one of those individually real quick. So our worship services, we know we have resumed our worship services in person, and we started that back, I think, the last week of May. And some of you may be wondering, well, how has it gone? I think it's gone well. We have actually, somebody said on his way in earlier tonight, Mark said, you need anything from me? I said, no. And I still don't need anything from you, Mark. I'm just going to use your name, Mark. We have a family that's a part of our congregation during this time period. And he works with the state, actually, on some of these things related to COVID. He's a doctor and things like that. And the first thing that he said to me when he came in, I think maybe it's the first or second week we started meeting in person again, he said that he was impressed with the job we were doing to stay safe here. And so it's been encouraging to not only try to make decision as staff what we should do, but to kind of get an attaboy from somebody that's out there in the medical field that's aware of the things that are being done right and that kind of thing. And they still are worshiping with us, so I guess he meant those words. So thank you, Mark, for sharing that with us. Then also, what we have going on in our congregation, and some of you may not even see it. Like if you're at home and you see this room, it's kind of packed. Like this morning, it felt like it was packed, but before you kind of panic about, well, I don't know if I can come back because it's packed, the reality is every other row is gone. Like we cleared out every other row. So if you see a bunch of heads in chairs, there's a lot of people here, but there is a gap between each row. So I want you to know if you're watching at home and you're not sure whether you should be back or not, you make the right decision. I know some of our congregation actually talked to their doctor this week, and because of their health conditions and stuff, the doctor said, no, don't go back yet. So y'all still make those wise decisions, but if you're kind of teetering back and forth, know that half the chairs are gone. Know that we are doing things to encourage people to have physical distancing when they get here. Know that we're having people wear masks as they come in and go out unless there's a reason why they can't or don't need to. And we're doing all of these things to not try to overreact or be fearful, but to be careful. I've been pleased to know this, that of the congregation that I'm aware of, we've had 2 or 3 families that have had COVID, and none of it has to do with originating here. And those families have recovered before they would consider being back at this building. They've done the right things. We've done things to keep everyone safe. And so I want to encourage you with that. Also, if you think about coming back here to the building, you can worship in this room. And I know everybody that's in this room kind of knows this. I'm doing this for those that may be watching at home, that you can be in this worship center, or you can be in the fellowship room, which is right behind the kitchen serving area for a little bit more space. Maybe your kids need to run wild and all of that. Or you can meet in room 200, which is upstairs, for a little bit more space. But I do believe this, that Satan would want us to think that not assembling together as a church family is not, he would want us to think it's not a big deal. And so, I don't know about you or not, but even as a pastor, Luke, dude, I was enjoying like kind of getting up Sunday whenever and not getting, I'm not really dressed up now, but not worrying about getting dressed up to go to church and worship at home. And that was nice for a couple of weeks. And then I realized, no, this isn't good. Like, I need to be back in the building. And the reality is this. Yes, watching the worship service online is the only or best option for many people, and they need to continue to do that. But there comes a point where the convenience of watching it on our own time and not coming in the building is actually a distraction from what God wants to do in our lives. So I want to really walk this line carefully. Please hear me say, many of you need to continue to stay at home, and I'm not trying to get any of you to change your mind. I'm just simply trying to say we must prioritize assembling together as the church family, whether it's here in the building or continuing to do so while online. A lot of the studies around our country says this about the United States of America, that our church attendance was declining before this. And it's like we have fast-forwarded 5 or 6 or 7 years, and there's a thought that when all of this is kind of over or beyond us a little bit more, or whatever the case would be, that church attendance will settle at a much lower rate than what it already was to accelerate the already declining, if that makes sense. I want to say as your pastor, we must prioritize assembling together as the church body, because that is critical and vital. All right, so you can be involved in church by worshiping with us. Number 2, hope groups. I wanted to discuss hope groups for just a moment. Our hope groups will be kicking off, as I said earlier, mid to late September, maybe the first part of October. We've got officially 11 groups with the anticipation that we might add a few more. And Don Vandevanter has been directing our hope groups and is continuing to do that, but he's also leading, he and Kelly are leading a group this year. Do you know what night you're doing yet? If you don't say it. They're doing a night, and it ends with the word day at the end of it. So they'll be hosting a group, or leading a group at least, and that'll all be available on the website in the Church Center app, and all the other groups will be updated as well. So be on the lookout for that. Most of our groups will probably be meeting in person. There may be a group or two that says, hey, we need to start off virtually at first. If you've been a part of a group and you love the group that you're in and it works for your schedule, please continue to plug into that same hope group. But if you need to make an adjustment, then do that. It's possible. If you've not been in a hope group, jump in and be a part of one. If you'd like to be in one kind of from the ground level up, definitely the Vandevanters is a new group, and that would be a great place to jump in. But if you're in a group that there's many of the group that feels like you should start virtually, be patient with them. And do that for a bit, see what happens. If you're in a group that meets in person and you yourself need to meet remotely, then ask your group to consider doing a Zoom setup or whatever, so it's hybrid, a hybrid motif, so that people can be in the house together and you can join remotely. But be a part of a hope group because it's all about community and missional living. It was interesting. I was at Impact, which, if you're not familiar with what Impact is an organization, faith-based organization in town that puts together camps for incoming students at A&M, and they do that every summer. Well, this year they did it virtually, and they also have a ministry fair that's a part of that. And so Friday night they had a ministry fair where parachurch organizations as well as churches could be there to kind of introduce themselves to students. And there were 4 of us that were there manning our table, and multiple students whenever I said, what kind of question do you have? The most common answer was they were curious about community. Now, I don't know whether that question was on the forefront because that's where they're at, or if it's accentuated by the last 5 months. I anticipate that if they're incoming freshmen, it's accentuated by the last 5 months because they got disrupted out of their senior year. They weren't able to enjoy the community like they used to, and they don't want that same thing to happen with their first year of college. But regardless, all of us need community. All of us need community. And I believe that our hope groups are an excellent place where you can experience community. You come in this room, if you're here for worship, there's a couple of hundred people. We had 200 people this morning. And you can know people in a room full of 200, but you really can't do community like you can in a smaller setting of 10 to 15 people and their children. So I would encourage you strongly to jump into a hope group so you can be a part of community. The third area that I mentioned a moment ago is discipleship. I wanted to list some things related to discipleship, and I want you to really hear all of it, but specifically one part, because one part's going to be a brand new thing we've never done before. And so I want you to hear about it, and I know you may still have questions and maybe more questions when I get done with it than when I start, but we encourage everyone to plug into one avenue of discipleship. And so our men's group has started back. They've been meeting for about a month now. They meet on Wednesday mornings. All this information is on our website. They meet on Wednesday mornings in a park here in College Station, Bachman Park, which is on Rock Prairie there. They're studying through the book of Proverbs. Our women's Bible study groups are starting. We're going to have 3 groups this year. They start the week of September 13th. All that information is on the website, so I'm not going to give you a bunch of days a week. Just know that there are 3 options, 2 of which will be in person, 1 of which will be virtual. They're going to have 1 daytime option in person and then 1 of each kind in the evenings. All that information is on the website as well. But women, they're going to be studying the Sermon on the Mount is what they're going to be studying. So those types of things have existed. Men's groups, women's groups. We've been used to having Bible study groups that meet on Sunday nights. Right now we don't have any of those scheduled because of kind of our schedule and things like that as far as COVID. But there is another option that's popping up this year. David Hutton, our esteemed equipping pastor, will be leading this study. And I would encourage you to consider being a part of it. And as I describe it, you may not know what it is, so maybe you need to contact David with questions, or maybe he'll contact you in anticipation that you might be interested in it. It's going to be called 4 Fields. 4 Fields, F-I-E-L-D-S. Callie, you know what that is, right? All right, so we have at least one person in the room that knows what that's all about. 4 Fields. It's going to be 4 Fields training, how to be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church. You've heard us talk about it a lot. You've experienced it, but you're like, I don't know how to do it. And I'm glad you're asking, how do I do it? Because this training will provide you an awesome opportunity to learn more about it. It's going to be 10 sessions long. There will be 3 different groups that meet, and so you'll have a night or day to choose from. It's not yet on the website, but it will be very soon. It will be starting the week of September 13th as well. There'll be let me make sure I'm saying this right. There'll be a Thursday night, a Saturday morning, and a Sunday night, right? Okay, so there'll be those 3 options. And here's what's going to be going on. David's going to be leading these groups, which I plan on being a part of one of these groups. He's going to be leading us through a study that will really help us clarify what it means to be a disciple, to make disciples, and be the church. I know that right before we decided to hire David, we were about ready to give his name. I was preaching, and at the end of the message, I said, guys, we need to get out there and share our faith and stop talking about we need to do it. One of our church members caught me afterwards and said, Alan, I agree with you, but I don't know how to do it. And I told her, I said, well, there's a solution coming. We're going to be doing some classes in the near future. COVID kind of slowed us down, but we're about to start them. And so if this is intriguing to you, if you want to know what it means to be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church, plug into this. At the end of the class, you'll be able to engage people with the gospel. You'll be able to begin making disciples, and you'll be able to train others as well. So there is a bit of encouragement and challenge associated with it, but you will be blessed And when we dismiss in a little bit, I don't want to commit David's schedule, but he may be available to answer some questions if you had questions for him when we dismiss. David, he's sitting in the back. Most of us know who you are. He's wearing that red shirt, sitting on the back row right now. All right, David. We're looking forward to that. So in discipleship, you can be a part of men's study, women's study. Some of us are in a D group already, and then the other option is this 4 Fields training. Now, I want to spend a decent amount of time on that fourth option. The fourth option of how to be plugged into our congregation is through serving in a ministry. I don't know whether you remember this or not, but at the end of last fall, the beginning of January, we were using as a staff this phrase, ministry reset. And what we were acknowledging was many of us that are part of our church are serving in about 13 different areas. And you're doing a great job and you love Jesus and you want to serve. I'm exaggerating. Maybe you're not in 13 areas, but you're in several areas. Some of you have been serving in some areas for multiple years. And you're doing it willingly because you love Jesus and you love the church. But the reality is you maybe have sensed that God's saying it's time to serve in another capacity. Not to drop out of serving in ministry, but to serve in another avenue or area. So it's interesting that God led us to kind of talk about in January, hey, let's have a ministry reset. And we said, hey, we're going to do a ministry reset everywhere except for preschool, because preschool, we kind of need to make sure we still have workers and we can move forward. And then God allows in His sovereignty this whole thing called COVID, and now we are at the ultimate reset. Unless you are in worship ministry or have been serving in hospitality, there's almost no area of ministry that we have been able to faithfully serve in on an ongoing basis over the last 5 months that's a part of our congregation. So if there was ever a great time for you to hit reset and say, I love this ministry, but I sense that God's leading me this direction, now is the time. So I would encourage all of us to consider, where are you serving in ministry? And right now it's in name only, because preschool, if you say preschool, you're not serving in preschool right now because we don't have preschool. But think of all the areas that your name is on the roster of where you serve. Prayerfully consider, is that where God would have me? Or do I need to make an adjustment to serve somewhere else? It wasn't long after I got here that I found out, and Howard can remind me, someone had been serving how many years back there in preschool? Was it a decade? 10 years. Somebody had been serving in preschool for 10 years, and they reluctantly said, I might need to do something different, and they almost felt guilty to say that to Howard. And Howard was able to say to them, you've been serving 10 years. There's nothing to be guilty about. God is shifting. You don't have any kids in preschool anymore, and there's somewhere else that you can serve. And the reality is this, we need to be a place where we can serve, where God has given us passion, skills, gifts, abilities, and yes, occasionally we see a need and we plug that need in. But if everywhere I'm serving is simply plugging a need, then perhaps I'm not in the place that God has wired me most for. Does that make sense? So I want you to seriously pray about, whether you're here in the building or watching at home, seriously pray about, where am I currently serving in ministry at Living Hope? And if you aren't serving anywhere and you're a member of our church, then I'm not going to like make you feel guilty, but I'm going to ask you to seriously consider, where do you need to jump into ministry, okay? But there's many of our members that are serving in multiple places, and perhaps your margin of life doesn't allow you to be in 4 ministries. And you may need to say yes to 1 or 2. I want to talk for a second to my Hope Group leaders. I feel like a Hope Group ministry is so vital at our church that perhaps for some of our Hope Group leaders, that may need to be the only place they serve so that they can have enough margin to pull that off. So if you're like going, but Alan, I feel gifted and led to serve in 2 areas, are you telling me I can't? No, that's not what I'm telling you. I'm telling you to consider, how has God gifted you to serve in ministry? Be praying about that. Maybe you've been on a ministry team and you know who your leader is, and you need to reach out to him and say, I love you, but at this season I'm going to make a switch and I don't really know where I'm going, or I know I'm going over there. let them know, because here's the deal. You're not leaving anyone high and dry because, number one, you wouldn't be, and number two, most of these ministries are on some sort of pause right now, and therefore God can kind of begin to reshuffle the deck, if you will, wherever God may be leading you. Now, in case I confused anyone, or in case you have a question, please send that question to Howard, or be ready to ask a question in a minute from the microphone, because we want to encourage you with this and not discourage you with what I just said. All of us, I believe, and I've said it this way, I said this way back in January, all of us should be serving where God is leading us to serve. And I believe there are two ways that God leads you to serve somewhere. Number one, the first priority I believe that God utilizes is your experiences, your skill set, your gifts, your passions, and that's the primary place that I think God wants to use you. Secondly, at the same time, there are occasions where there is a need in the congregation, and you hear God say, that may not be your complete sweet spot, but you can serve there, and you can serve there with a servant's heart, and you can do so in a loving fashion to jump in and not reluctantly and be willing to be a part of it. So don't just simply say, well, Alan said, only serve wherever is my sweet spot, and I'm going to let everything else slide. But the reality is, there are times that God makes it very clear to us that there is a place where we need to serve and we need to jump in. I was joking with Howard tonight. If you saw the children's video this morning, he supposedly was going to eat a Pop-Tart out of the trash can. And if you didn't see the video, you need to go back and watch it, and maybe it'll make sense why I'm saying this. So as I came in this morning, I saw a little Cheerio that was on the floor. Well, obviously, he wasn't going to eat that. That's pretty nasty. Not Cheerios, but on the floor. We do clean our building, but it's still pretty nasty. And so as he came in, I said, well, Howard, there's a Cheerio for you to eat. Well, tonight when I came back through, guess what was on the floor again? Another Cheerio. So I said something to Howard about it. You're like, Alan, what are you talking about? Now I'm finally getting to the point. My stories sometimes take me too long to get there, but I'm there now. I said, Howard, pick up that Cheerio. And he jokingly said to me, some of us see something and we pick it up and do something with it. And he was just giving me grief. But the reality is this. I don't think Howard thinks that picking up Cheerios is his sweet spot, and he has a passion to go around this church building and find a Cheerio or something to throw in the trash. No, he saw a need, and he loves his church, and so he met that need. So there are times that we are a part of a ministry that is not necessarily our exact sweet spot, but it's still an area that we can willingly serve alongside of. So I want all of us to be somewhere where God wants us to be, with the margin to do what God is calling us to do. So here are some ways that I think that you can serve right now, today, maybe not today, but this week, right now, you could serve in the following areas. There are other ministries in our congregation. I'm not sliding any of them, but these are the things that are about to happen or are happening now that you could definitely plug into. First one that I'm thinking of is worship. Did you know that with COVID, we have a few extra things in here called cameras and video boards and switchers and all of this live streaming stuff? Like, there's all kinds of technical help that they need in worship. The guys and gals that are doing it are doing a great job, but they could use some other people in the rotation. Also singing and instruments and things like that. So if you're interested in serving in worship area, then Eric is your man, and you can talk to him about that. Another area is hospitality. Chad, raise your hand. Mr. Beard right there. Chad Gardner heads up our hospitality. If you're watching at home, I don't mean this slight or anything, but several of our hospitality members are the folks that need to stay home right now for health reasons or age reasons and things like that. So we haven't had a whole lot of need of hospitality because we're not running the kitchen right now. But we do need to greet people. We do need to have a door open. And I know that Chad and his family and some of the deacons are doing a phenomenal job with it. But how nice would it be if we had some more folks jump in and be a part of hospitality? So I'm making a pitch on Chad's behalf that if you're willing in this season to stand at the door and wave at people and do the elbow bump with or whatever, or help with making sure sanitizer is out, all of those things that hospitality is doing right now, I think that Chad could find a slot for you to plug in. So that would be a place to consider is hospitality. Another area is our age group ministries that are starting back. I listed them a moment ago. Howard is in the back there. Howard is in charge of making sure children's worship happens. I don't want him or any of his workers to have to be back there week after week after week. I want them to be able to have a break, and so we could use some more children's workers. Now, let me preface that right now. If you are interested in children's worship or these age-based ministries and you haven't been background checked, that will have to be done because we background check anybody that works with our kids. So if you're willing to go through a background check, have a conversation with Howard, and find a fit for you, children's worship would be a great place. You could be in here during the singing portion of the worship service, back there during the sermon, during the boring part. You're supposed to laugh because I'm not too boring, hopefully. And then you can serve once a month in that capacity, okay? Another area that could be a place for you to serve is in Awana. You're like, Alan, I didn't think we were doing Awana, or are we doing Awana? Here's the biggest programmatic shift we're making. Awana is not happening in the building. Awana has like 7,423 kids here on a Sunday night, and we cannot physical distance. So what we have decided, and what the Awana staff has decided, that would be Howard and Kyle Page and Brandy Lloyd and some of their leaders, we have decided to try Awana at home. We're going to walk with you as a church to help you and resource you and encourage you and coach you and train you and those kinds of things. That information should be coming out in the next week or so. But you may be interested in helping with Awana, and here's 2 ways you can help with Awana. Number 1, you can lead Awana at your house with your kids. Awana goes up through the 6th grade, right? So you could do Awana with your kids. We'll get you the material, we'll help you. Or if you've done a background check and you're willing to host kind of your neighborhood, you could do a neighborhood Awana club. And you could do it on Sunday night, Saturday morning, Monday night, Tuesday. The options are fairly unlimited where you could do it. It doesn't have to be Sunday night at 6 o'clock. It could be some other time. And so if you're curious about Awana, then you can talk to Howard. That'd be another place. Additionally, Howard, he's in charge of a lot of these things. He's in charge of the students. So when 605 starts back, I don't know how he is on his staffing. I know he's not going to have a ton of staff because of, again, physical distancing, but you might inquire as to whether or not you could plug into that. Now, as Will mentioned a moment ago, SEA, which is College and Young Adults, is starting back the week of September 13th. And I know that our college ministry could use lots of help, whether that be adopting a student, informally to kind of encourage them as they're new to the community, whether it's just seeing people in the hallway as they come on Sundays, or whether it's being a part of their Bible study, or some other activity that I'm leaving out. But there's lots of ways that you could be involved in these age-specific things. All right. So I want to stop for just a second. I don't have a lot more to cover, but I have a little bit more. Do you have any questions? Has any questions come in back there? Or as I talked about, these things restarting, did I go too fast? Did I leave something out? I know I didn't give all the details of the times. I just kind of gave you the general thoughts. Do you have questions about Awana? Do you have questions about when these things are kicking back up, back off? I'm going to be quiet for a second. First of all, are there any questions that came in on text? No. All right. Any questions here in the building that you may have? Again, if you'd rather not be on the microphone, you can raise your hand and I'll repeat the question for you. All right. Let me say this. Again, I don't want to commit anybody's time, but Ricky, would you raise your hand? Ricky's back here. She can answer questions when we dismiss about women's Bible studies. I already mentioned David is the person you can talk to when we dismiss about the Four Fields training. I've already mentioned that Howard is the person you can talk to about children's worship or 605 or Awana. All right. Chad is the person you can talk to about hospitality. Eric you can talk to about worship and things like that. And then Will, put your hand up in there, back there, run the sound for us. Will is the guy you can talk to about SEA, okay, which is our college and young adults. All right. Yes, Callie, I see that hand, yes.
Are the Bible studies like the Four Fields and the women's Bible study, they're semesterly?
Okay, so A question about the classes. So the men's class, I know you didn't say that because you're not a man, but I'm still going to walk through it. The men's class started, Don, about 3-4 weeks ago. Okay, 5 or 6 weeks ago. They're doing the book of Proverbs. You can still jump in and be a part of that. They meet almost every Wednesday. I think they're going to have maybe one more Wednesday off at some point as a short little break. They'll be done by Thanksgiving. Is that right? Okay, so they're studying the book of Proverbs, men, at 6:30 on Wednesday mornings at Brian Bachman Park. Don is in the building, so Don would be a good person to ask a question about that. So that's the men's Bible study. And then in the spring, I'm sure they'll start another one, and it'll be obviously the same people can do it, but it'll be a start and stop kind of thing with new study. Women's Bible study, it's the same concept. They've done a couple of studies. They've done 1 and 2 Samuel. This time it's going to be Sermon on the Mount. How many weeks is that going to be? Okay, so right about Thanksgiving, she just said. They're going to start the week of September 13th on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And there's a morning and a night and all that, huh?
Thursday, on our worship guide this morning, it said Thursday PM, it's Thursday AM, and then it's Tuesday, like virtual and in-person, Tuesday PM.
Oh, there's 2 on Tuesday for PM?
There's a virtual on Tuesday in the evening, also an in-person on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. So it might have been wrong in the worship guide inadvertently. We make mistakes, we're humans. So Tuesday night, there are 2 options. One is in person, and one is virtual. Tuesday nights, week of September 13th. Then the other option is a daytime, and that'll be on Thursday, and that'll be in person. And those all 3 start the week of September 13th. It's 10 or 11 weeks long, which takes us right about to Thanksgiving. So it's a very similar time frame, although the men's has already started. Does that help you out? Four Fields is going to start the week of September 13th, and it's going to run 10 weeks straight. Okay, so they're all going to be finishing about the same time, Callie. All 3 of those are going to finish about the same time. They're all going to be a semester-based. Okay, week before Thanksgiving you'll finish.
And then will it happen again next semester?
Four Fields, is that going to happen again next semester?
It's not going to be 3 classes. We'll do 1 each.
Okay.
The idea is to reproduce it personally, not
Okay, so let me answer that thank you, David. Let me answer it for those watching at home. The idea of 4 Fields is purposefully reproduction, replicating. And so we have a disciple who makes disciples. So you're going to be trained to help reproduce some of the things you're learning. But at the same time, we know that some folks may want to jump in and be a part of that training again. So we anticipate next year offering training again, but we won't do 3 classes. At that point, if we start one in January or February or March or whatever we do, whenever, I don't know when we will. It'd probably just be the 1 class. But yeah, that's an ongoing concept that we want to use, but we can't guarantee how many we would offer next time. All right. Thank you, Callie. She got us started. Anybody else online or in person have any questions? Nothing back there, Howard? Oh, we do? Where? Oh,
Yeah.
Howard.
Yeah, I got
Sorry.
one. One of the questions I got asked was, did he, Alan, say the date for Awana training if I missed it, or is it still being planned? Alan, if it's okay, I'll just go ahead and answer that really
That'd be
quickly.
awesome.
Okay, one of the things that we're looking at is we're talking about the dates that we're going to be starting. We won't be starting the Awana program officially until probably October, but very, very soon for the people that are interested in signing up and having it at their home or having it for their neighborhood, we're going to be planning on doing some Awana leader training. And you will be the Awana leader, so it'll be us training you and helping you. One of the great things that we want to do, though, is throughout the year is have more trainings and walk alongside you. And that would mean that some of the leaders would come and visit you at your club. Some leaders would come by and help. We'd have probably some Zoom meetings throughout the year just to check up with each other and get ideas from one another. There's a whole lot of things that are still moving parts right now, but we're going to be solidifying those really, really soon. And we should be hearing a whole lot more about Awana in September.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? You almost bought something. You were at an auction, Kristen. You put your hand up. I thought you were about to say something. All right. Let me go over a few announcements. Thanks, Howard. Want to encourage you. We've had something in the worship guide about this. It's actually on the website as well. We are partnering with a ministry opportunity. We're partnering with Discovery for International Women. And we're providing craft and school supply bags for international families during this difficult season. This is going to be a great way for us to share the love of Christ and to generously bless other families. The supplies that we need are specifically spelled out on our Facebook page, I believe, and most definitely on our website. Go to the homepage, click the link, it'll show you what's needed. Here's what you need to know. We have 2 more weeks and it needs to be here. There's a bucket, if you will, out there in the entryway that you could drop the supplies there. Monica, how is that right? Are there any? Both doors. Is Monica the point for that? All right, Monica House is the point person for that. I know she's not in the room right now, but if you had questions specifically beyond what you see on the website and you know how to contact Monica, feel free to reach out to her. She's a part of that ministry anyway, and she can answer any questions you may have. Membership class is happening next Sunday night at 6 o'clock. It'll be in person, but also Zoom if somebody needed it. Please go to our website or contact the church office this week to sign up for the class so I know who to anticipate to be here. If you are a member of our church, I don't know if you saw this announcement this morning or not, but if you're a member of our church, we have an opportunity to have a church membership directory that will be private but will be accessible on the website, not the church website, but the Church Center app website or on your phone. But your information won't be there unless you opt in. So you'll be receiving an email this week from Planning Center saying, hey, Living Hope now has a directory. You want to be a part of it? And you can opt in or opt out. If you opt in, then you can say, you can check mark, yes, include my address, or no, do not. Yes, include my email address, or no, do not, or whatever. Yes, include my picture, or no, do not. And you're like, picture? I didn't even know there's a picture on there. There's the good news. You can upload a picture of yourself and your family. You can do all of this. And so it'll be a directory for our church members. And so just know that that email is legit, and it is happening. It is going to be protected. It is only for church members, and you have the opportunity to opt in or opt out. Call Diana this week, or Brandy, if you have any questions. Also, I wanted to remind you that normally, right now, this week, we would be looking at our budget for the coming year, and we'd be approving it next week. But our budget has now moved and is starting January 1. So just know that come November and December, we'll be presenting the 2021 budget, and we'll be voting on the 2021 budget at that point in time. So just in case you've been here a long time, you're like going, it's August, we're supposed to be doing that. Remember, we extended our budget for 4 months, and we're going to start fresh January 1. All right. I want to encourage you with a few things real fast, and then I am going to spend just a few minutes on this idea of elders and allow you to ask any questions. I want to encourage us. All of us are processing this time period that we are in a little bit differently. And when I say all of us, I'm not just talking about people of our congregation. I'm talking about people out in the community. Some of us, I'm going to just use the phrase some of us, I don't fit every category, but some of us may think that masks should always be worn. Some of us may think masks should never be worn. Some of us may think that it's all being reported accurately. Others of us may have questions as to whether it's being reported accurately or not. And then, on top of all that, we have this thing called a presidential election coming up. I don't know if y'all got the memo about that or not, but there is one coming up. There's also racial things that have happened over the last few months. There are all kinds of things that have happened and are happening. And I'm being proactive and not reactive, so I want you to know that. I'm being proactive here and not reactive. We as a church family and as individuals in a church family have a choice. We can either attack someone for their views that are different than ours, or we can show grace to one another for the views that are different than ours. So I would encourage us to continue to show grace to one another, to our friends on social media, to our neighbors and coworkers. Let's shine the light of Christ on those that are around us. I know this is not a direct application, but I did want to read to us some of Romans chapter 14. Here's the beginning of Romans 14. Paul is saying, as for the one who is weak in faith, welcome him, but not to quarrel over opinions. One person believes he may eat anything, while the weak person eats only vegetables. Let not the one who eats despise the one who abstains, and let not the one who abstains pass judgment on the one who eats, for God has welcomed him. Who are you to pass judgment on the servant of another? It is before his own master that he stands or falls, and he will be upheld, for the Lord is able to make him stand. One person esteems one day as better than another, while another esteems all days alike. Each one should be fully convinced in his own mind. The one who observes the day observes in honor of the Lord. The one who eats, eats in honor of the Lord, since he gave thanks to God, while the one who abstains, abstains in honor of the Lord and gives thanks to God. For none of us lives to himself, and none of us dies to himself. For if we live to the Lord, and if we die to the Lord. So then, whether we live or whether we die, we are the Lord's. For to this end Christ died and lived again, that he might be Lord both of the dead and of the living. I would encourage us to continue to love one another well and treat each other with the love of Christ. And again, I want to be very, very clear. What I'm saying right now is not a reaction to anything. Instead, it's a reminder, because we're church family talking tonight, that we need to navigate this in a loving, Christ-honoring way, because we won't all agree on every aspect of these things. Now, hear me. We've got to be true to the Scripture, and we're not going to compromise on that. But some of these other things that are a little more vague, and we're not, any of us, I think, experts in any of these fields, we've got to show grace, and I would encourage us to continue to love one another well in this season. Along those same lines, I want to encourage us that I believe a big reason some of the arguing that we have seen in the public about some of these matters, I believe a big part of it could be, very realistically, because there's been a lack of community that has taken place. People have gotten out of their normal way of doing things, and we're not around each other, and so we kind of forget what it's like to be in a face-to-face relationship, and so it makes us hungry for community. Sometimes when we're hungry for community, it can actually almost have the adverse reaction to us, and that is kind of make us snippy and snappy at each other. So I would encourage that we as a church family do everything we can do to continue to help restore community, because while we've had a couple of hundred people, probably unique people, 200 to 250 unique people have been in our building since we've restarted, there's over 400 unique individuals that are a part of our church family, so not everyone has been able to be in the building yet. And if we're not careful, we can lose track of love for one another because of this lack of community. So I'd encourage us to do everything we can to have community with each other. I was having a conversation with someone recently about how we can maintain community. I was using this illustration. I hope that you'll see where I'm going with this. I want us to be a diverse congregation. And when I say diverse, I mean diverse ethnically, economically, socioeconomically, however you want to phrase that, age range of people, stations of life or seasons of life. I want married couples to feel comfortable. I want single moms and dads to feel comfortable. I want never been marrieds to feel comfortable. I want divorced families to feel comfortable. I want folks to feel comfortable in our congregation. But if we took a cross-section of our church, I believe that we have a large majority of young families. And if we're not careful, we can forget what it's like to be someone else that fits in one of those other categories. I'm not categorizing people, please hear me. But we forget what it's like. We need to do our very best to be loving and welcoming to everyone who walks in our door. And so the description I was using was, oftentimes, I've even done this, I'll use the college young C group to illustrate this. Sometimes on Sunday mornings, they're like, oh, where's he going? Sometimes on Sunday mornings, after we get done with the worship service, they're in a circle and having a conversation. And so when I walk up, that circle's closed. Like, there ain't no getting in that circle. So I just bebop over there and go, hey, is this the cool kids circle or what? And they'll usually step out, they'll give me grief, whatever, because I'm not cool, and I'll come in and I'll chat with them for a couple minutes, and then I'll leave, and they'll all celebrate that I'm gone, I think. I don't know if that's how it happens or not. But the idea is this. That group, I'm using them because I love them, and they're not doing what I'm describing. That group is just a group of friends talking, but if you look at it, it might look like it's a closed circle. But that's not what they're doing. They're not excluding people. But What would it look like if we intentionally, and now I am look like I'm picking on y'all. I promise I'm not. I love y'all. What would it look like if we intentionally made sure that it didn't appear even to be closed so that someone could come into that circle? What would it be like if I'm standing out here talking to one of y'all and I see a guest come in and I immediately stop that conversation with you because I know you, I love you, you love me, but I've never met this person. If I don't catch them now, they get in here and I don't have a chance to say howdy to them. So I'm just saying, let's be cognizant of the fact that there are people that walk in our doors. We don't know their story. This may be the last opportunity they have to give Christian community a shot. And let's not inadvertently exclude them. Again, this is proactive, not reactive, okay? But let us include folks in our circle, figuratively and otherwise, so that they can be a part of a loving community here. And as a church family, we should do our best to stay in touch with one another. When I come in on Sunday morning, yeah, you can still maintain physical distancing. If you want to keep even super physical distancing, that's possible. Wave, say howdy. If you got a loud voice like mine, you can talk through the mask. I mean, it's amazing. Let us love one another and serve one another. If you're not able to be in the building, pick up the phone and call. I got a text from somebody this week. I'm not going to say who it was from or who the person was, but I got a text this week and they said, so-and-so from the church. This is someone that's not able to come and worship with us on Sunday mornings. Called me out of the blue just to ask me how I'm doing. We should be doing that very thing. Texting each other, calling each other, checking in on one another, driving by somebody's house. I guarantee you if I drive by your house and I yell out the window, you're going to hear me. Like, do something to foster community because God wants us to love one another well. And as we get ready to kick these things off, we've got to be careful to really reestablish community along the way. And sometimes people aren't like me. I know that's a shock. But some people aren't like me, and you may have to kind of pull them towards community. They may not be like me and come in and go, oh, it's this circle for the cool kids, and butt them their way into the conversation. We need to lovingly encourage others. Now, don't be like rude, like literally pull them, and don't be like Howard. I mean, Howard, I love you, bro. I love you. But encourage people to be a part of community here. All right. I do want to spend about 8 minutes. You need me? Or are you just reminding me?
We talked about people moving forward.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Eric. Eric just reminded me that if you were here on Sunday mornings, and especially if you don't have a lot of little kids that you need to kind of get out the back door quickly if you need to, if you could begin to move forward a little bit. And the reason we say that is because if a guest comes in, it may look like there aren't any chairs because all the chairs in the back may be taken. We may all look like back row Baptists. Come on up and find a seat a little bit closer. That, in all seriousness, would help facilitate, especially as our worship service sizes begin to grow a little bit more. We're going to need to kind of gravitate towards the front. So I know this row right here had nobody on it today, so it's always available. So anyway, thank you, Eric. All right, I'm going to cover aspects of deacons for elders for just a few minutes. But before I do that, any questions or comments in-house or via text before I do that? All right. To talk about elders, I'd like for us to look at Jeremiah. I know that may seem weird. This was the text Jeremiah 23. I was going to preach this text this week, and then yesterday morning I switched entirely. God told me to preach the other text, and so I did. So I spent yesterday getting Jeremiah 31 together. Hopefully it made some sense this morning. And so now I'm going to jump us back into Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23, Jeremiah is pointing out that the leaders of the nation of Israel had dropped the ball. He uses the word shepherds, and the word shepherds here can mean civil leaders, including the king for sure. It can include priests. It can include prophets who are dropping the ball. Any kind of leader, political or religious or both, is how this word is used in this text. But I do want to share this with you. Whenever the Old Testament was written, almost the entire thing was written in Hebrew. And then at some point they said the common language is Greek. And so they translated the Hebrew into Greek. They called it the Septuagint. The reason they call it Septuagint is because 70 people put it together, and Septuagint carries with it the idea of 7 or 70. In fact, in your notations of your Bible, you may sometimes see the Roman letters LXX. If it says, hey, in the LXX it says this. LXX is the 70 or the Septuagint. So the Septuagint is the Greek version. Whenever you look at Jeremiah 23, the word shepherd in the Greek is the same word that's used in the New Testament when talking about pastors and elders and overseers, whenever that particular word is used. So here's what Jeremiah says. Jeremiah 23, verse 1. Woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep of my pasture, declares the Lord. Therefore, thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, concerning the shepherds who care for my people, you have scattered my flock and have driven them away. You've done the opposite of what I've called you to do. And it says, you've not attended to them. This is a scathing verse right here. He says, you've not attended to them, so behold, definitely I will attend to you for your evil deeds. That's not a good attend. That's not an attend they want any part of. I will attend to you for your evil deeds, declares the Lord. Then I will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the countries where I have driven them, and I will bring them back to their fold, and they shall be fruitful and multiply. I will set shepherds over them, and these shepherds will care for them. They shall fear no more, nor be dismayed, neither shall any be missing, declares the Lord. Behold, the days are coming when the Messiah comes, declares the Lord, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, that's Jesus, and he shall reign as king and deal wisely and shall execute justice and righteousness in the land. In his days Judah will be saved and Israel will dwell securely. And this is the name by which he will be called. The Lord is our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days are coming when the Messiah comes, declares the Lord, when they shall no longer say, as the Lord lives, who brought up the people of Israel out of the land of Egypt, but as the Lord lives, who brought up and led the offspring of the house of Israel out of the north country and out of all the countries where he had driven them, then they shall dwell in their own land. I want you to see, God saying the shepherds have not done what they've been called to do. I will execute judgment on them, and I will set shepherds over them that will care for the flock. And they will follow the example and the lead of the Messiah because he is the ultimate shepherd. So whenever we talk about this idea of elders, some of you were on our last church-wide gathering and some of you weren't. But we opened up this concept of what would it look like to explore the option of considering having elders here at Living Hope. And the reason that elders are important is because elders are the ones who are the shepherds of the flock to care for the needs that are there. And that God holds these elders or leaders accountable. I don't have a whole lot of time, but I do want to read one passage from the New Testament on this, and that's found in 1 Peter. 1 Peter chapter 5. One of the questions that we got as it relates to elders was this idea of, wait a minute, I don't really know. Like, I know that elders is something the Bible talks about, but I've been a part of a church in the past where it seemed like the elders ruled, and what they said went every time, and there was no say among anybody else, and it's almost like they were abusing their role as elder. And I want to remind us that if we go down this trail and we consider having elders in our congregation, that it's vital always for us to follow the qualifications of an elder. And if we follow that, then those elders won't rule the way we just described. Instead, they will lead instead of rule. So here's a qualification that we find in 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. It kind of jumps in the middle of it all, but it says that a shepherd is not domineering, an elder is not domineering over those in your charge, but being examples to the flock. And when the chief shepherd appears, you'll receive the unfading crown of glory. An elder is not going to be domineering, but loving, caring, gentle, and lead in a healthy way. Here at Living Hope, if we ever go the route of having elders, they won't be elders that rule the church. Instead, they'll be elders that help lead the church. And kind of a phrase that we could use is that we would be an elder-led, deacon-served, and congregational-approved church family. Meaning the congregation would continue to have input on the things we already do. Approving budget, making large decisions, having conversations, finding out what's going on. All of these things It would just allow for a little more clarity of the leadership structure that's in place. So I put together some things, and I'm not going to share all of it at all right now because it's too preliminary, but I put together some things because Kat asked me to do that, and Kat, which stands for Church Administrative Team, and staff have looked at this document, and we began to talk about what would it look like for us to have elders. And here are a few things that I wanted to share with you. The makeup of elders that I would recommend would be that it would be partially staff and non-staff, both. And when I say staff, I'm talking about our pastors that are on staff. So some have asked, well, if we've got pastors already, why would we need non-staff elders? Here are at least 3 reasons why I think it's helpful for us to have non-staff elders. In no particular order, number 1, non-staff elders kind of ground the pastoral staff in such a way back to real-world realities. Sometimes we forget as pastors that are full-time what it's like to be somebody out there working at the school or working at the police department or working wherever they have, at the restaurant or running a business. And so I think that to have someone that's grounded in everyday life is somebody that's a vital part of a potential group of elders. A second reason why non-staff elders would be helpful is because, hear me, what I'm not saying, the staff is not about to go somewhere, but inevitably those things can happen in congregations, and so hypothetically it's helpful for non-staff elders to exist because it does provide stability and consistency during any future staff changes, allowing ministry to keep going unchanged, or ministry doesn't have to stall when a pastor leaves. And hear me say, I plan on being here till I retire if you'll have me. But those are some other reasons that non-staff elders are important. And then the third one is because we've been, y'all did this before I got here. We helped plant 2 congregations, right? What would it look like if we were involved in more church planting? The reality is this: the model of having non-staff elders is a more reproducible model to plant other congregations than to just have professional staff as elders. So, if we were to get elders, another question I was asked is, how would we go about that? The way that we would go about that, obviously we wouldn't do it until the church approved it, but if it was approved and we went this route, the way we would go about finding elders would be that depending on what route we go, whether it be staff or myself or Kat, there would be some element of being able to kind of begin to put a list together of names of men, elders would be men, that could have biblical qualifications. Those names would be screened and interviewed and processed and figured out if they biblically qualify and if they're willing and have the margin to serve and all of that. And then we would bring those names, whatever number of names there are, like less than 10, but how much less than 10, I don't know. But we would bring those names to the congregation and say, hey, here are the names of the men we would like for y'all to consider. If there's a biblical reason why any one of those men aren't qualified to serve as an elder, you would have, and then whatever it would be, 2, 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, to get back to us to let me know why someone was not biblically qualified. And then at the end of that response time, we would represent the names that were remaining, and the congregation would be able to vote on that. And so then elders would be in place and be able to serve moving forward. So what would a possible timeline look like? I believe that prayerfully done, a potential timeline would be that this fall, there'd be more meetings among leaders of our congregation, also as a church as a whole, to continue to discuss this a little bit more. And if God led us in such a way that in November, when we present the church budget, we can say, hey, we're ready to present this for church action. And if we were able to do that, then when we had Q&A for the budget, we'd also be able to have Q&A again. This would not be the first time Q&A, but another Q&A about this idea of elders. And then in December, when we vote on the annual budget, we would also potentially be able to vote on that. And then at some point, so all of that I just described would be before any of the men are interviewed. Because we're not going to go interview a bunch of men and get elders lined up before the church gives permission to go that route. But whenever it would be approved, if it went this way and was approved in December, theoretically, then as we move into early spring, those interviews could take place. We could find out who those people are, those men are, and then they would be presented to the church. So, That's a little bit about elders that I wanted to share tonight. I know that part of what came up last time is this is too vague. Like, we would like to know a little bit more about how it would look within the life of Living Hope. I know that doesn't answer all the questions, but it begins to answer them a little bit more than what we covered the last time. What I would like to do is I'm going to get a drink of water because I definitely want to give enough time for any Q&A here. If there's any questions, you can text them, or you can do like Callie a minute ago and say it out loud. I'll repeat the question, or you can come to a microphone. But I would love to hear any clarifying questions you may have, depending on what it is. I may or may not have an answer. But and if anybody in Cat is here that wants to throw anything out, they can as well. But any questions that anybody has, either online or in person. Don't have anything coming in on your phone? Okay. Trooper?
I've got one. I'm watching kids.
Yeah.
Walk all the way up there. When we're talking about possible timeline, present, are we thinking approve the concept and then make changes? Because our church structure document would require quite a few
Right.
changes. So are y'all thinking like approve the concept and then walk through the mechanics?
Right.
Or are you thinking have the full thing
Yeah.
ready?
Trooper asked a great question, and Trooper, that's a conversation that Kat is having, of course, and in fact, we had some more email conversation about that today, and because I don't have a solid answer, I didn't bring it up, but because you asked it, there are a couple of ways to go about this potentially. At the bare minimum, there would have to be changes within our structure document that would be voted on in this timeline in December that would permit us to have elders and operate with elders. So that would be the bare minimum. And if we went that route, then the elders or whoever could help formulate the finished product. Or the perhaps better option would be, no, we would need to do both of those and begin to put together a team of people that could help rewrite or adjust or whatever the right word would be for the structure document now, kind of in its entirety, and then present that then would allow us to choose elders, or even a kind of, because right now it's hybrid is a pretty popular thing to say right now, or it could be a hybrid where what I just described happens, where the whole structure document is changed now, with the caveat of understanding that perhaps, depending on how it's put together and stuff, that the elders may have the ability to tweak it with church vote after they came on board. And the only reason I even throw all that out is because in some ways I feel like ideally elders, part of their overseeing is overseeing something as big as a structure document. But if you don't already have elders in place, you got to at least have the bare minimum that gives you permission to pursue elders. Yeah. So essentially what he's asking about, not every church calls it a church structure document, but every organization should have a constitution and bylaws or a document that is a governing type document. And so that's what his question is in reference to. But yes, it most definitely would require, it wouldn't just simply be in November and December, hey guys, is it all right with y'all if we get elders? All in favor say aye. No, the bare minimum would have to be, look at page 12, I'm making a number up. Look at page 12, this has been changed to say this. It would definitely have to at least be that. Kat, anything that y'all want to add to what I just said with that? Okay. Thank you, Trooper. Any other questions? Howard has one.
Alan, for
Yes.
everybody at home, they really didn't hear Trooper's question really well, and so what I just got in was kind of I'm going to kind of give you an amalgam of the two questions that we got.
Okay.
Essentially, is they didn't hear. Obviously, there's going to be some changes to the structure document at some point. And I realize
Right.
you just answered that, but maybe reiterate it for them. But then also about how they're going to be picked, the
men?
elders and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I'll do is this, and you may even want to text that person back
I will.
in case they don't hear me say this. If my response a moment ago to Trooper's question didn't answer their question, then let me know. Or if it kind of adequately answered that aspect of the question, then I won't ask it. I won't answer it again. The other question being, how would they be selected? Ideally, once we had elders in place, for an elder to be selected, that means the elders would come together to prayerfully consider who are the men that should be considered. And then those names would be collected. It's very similar to how our deacons do it currently, where the deacons pray through potential names, and then those names are presented to the congregation. That would be the same approach with elders. The only drawback right now is we don't technically have elders. We have people serving in that capacity, for sure our pastors, and sometimes our CAT serves in some capacity similar, and sometimes our deacons in some ways will serve in similar ways. So the things that we've talked about at the CAT level is, what would it look like if, as pastor, if we got to that point, that I first began the conversation with our current pastors, making sure that they are interested in serving as an elder or not, have that conversation, and then any of our pastoral staff that plans on being pursued as an elder would help me come up with those initial names, and then it would be vetted among that group of guys, whether it's me and one of the other pastors or two of the other pastors or all three of the other pastors, and then we would have an opportunity to vet these guys. And then once we had to go ahead from those men, we would then present those names to the congregation for their consideration. Because we definitely don't want to come up with a list of names and before I even talk to those guys, go, hey, we think it could be X, Y, and Z, and then two of those guys go, oh, hold up, dude, I don't want to be considered. And so none of those names would come public until those men were willing to serve in that capacity at the church's pleasure. So I don't know whether, Howard's giving me a thumbs up back there, so I think that maybe based on my answer to Trooper's question a moment ago, yes, there's not a definite answer. Those were kind of the three options of possible answers. And we would definitely entertain any other feedback that y'all would have. And I'm looking towards Trooper just because he asked a question, but others of you would have that same kind of question. Any feedback over these next few days would be helpful for us as we consider. All right. Any other questions in person or on the internet? I'm going to wait about 30 more seconds. I thought I better look at my phone just in case there wasn't anything. All right. Well, we got started about 4 minutes late, and I went about 5 minutes longer than I meant to, so that means a total of 10 minutes longer than I intended to. So my apologies. I know we covered a lot of ground. Know that this email will be going out this week. I anticipate putting together just kind of bullet points for you so that if you already watched this and you're like, I didn't take notes, you talked way too much, Alan, I'm going to have some bullet points that will go in a PDF style attached to this email, okay? None of these conversations are closed, obviously. If you want to pursue any of these things, to find out about ministry opportunities or discipleship classes, talk to those men or women about those things. The elder thing is definitely far from closed because we have more discussion that needs to take place. But feel free to give any feedback to me or to Kat. You can send an email to Kat, C-A-T, at lhbc.net, specifically about anything related to the elder part of the conversation. I am very thankful to be your pastor, very grateful for how much of a blessing you are to me and to our church family and to my own family at my house. It's been my prayer that I would lead well. In fact, most of you, if you've asked me how I can pray for you, that's basically what I'm going to say. Because as David said at a meeting we had the other night, none of us had a seminary class on how to handle a worldwide pandemic or whatever this is that we may or may not be going through. And so it's uncharted water for us. Yes, the church has faced things like this in the past, but yes, it's been over a century since the Church of America has faced something like this. And so at times I haven't necessarily, even in normal life, I don't always know how to lead, but definitely in a time like this, there's been plenty of times where I've been kind of at a loss on how to move forward. But I've been grateful to see how much of a blessing you have been to us as a congregation as we continue to seek to be the family of God together. And God is blessing us. God is doing incredible things. We have new families that are still coming to worship during a time like this that have never been here before. A family that was here the last 2 Sundays. They may be watching this right now and sent me a cool email about what God's doing in their life right now. God is up to incredible things. Let's pray for one another. Let's encourage one another. And let's truly seek not to do church, not to go to church, not to have a worship service, not to go to a Bible study, but let's genuinely seek to be a disciple, make disciples, and be the church. Because God is not through with what He's doing in our city, in our nation, or in the world. And I believe that the wake-up call has come to the church for us to stand up and to be the church in a time such as this, where the world is watching and the world is scared and the nations are raging and God is still on His throne. I saw a post. I'm not going to word it well, but I saw it this afternoon. It essentially said, this person was not being a pessimist, but they said, true, the republic could be at stake, but the kingdom will never be at stake. The kingdom, God's kingdom, marches on. And we're called to be good citizens of this country, but ultimately of the kingdom of Christ as we seek to be disciples who make disciples as the church. Would you stand with me? I'd love to pray us out to dismiss us. Thank you for worshiping or joining us tonight here or online. If you have any questions as we dismiss, feel free to stop and ask one of us. And take a second. I know it's a school night, which is weird to think. It's been 5 months since we said so, but it's a school night. I know that. But if you take a moment to say howdy to somebody around you before you leave, okay? God, we love you. We thank you for this opportunity to be together tonight to talk about what you're doing in your church, not just Living Hope, but the church. And may you receive the glory and the honor of everything that we seek to do so that we don't get ahead of you, but that we follow your lead. It's in Jesus' name that I pray. Amen. One more thing I forgot to say. I know we didn't announce it big time, but if you came prepared or would like to, we are receiving a benevolent offering tonight that will go to our benevolence fund. There's an offering plate out there and also our boxes. Just know that if you put money there, it will not be counted in the general fund tonight. It'll be counted in benevolence fund. So if you'd like to do that, it's there. All right. You're dismissed.